They cut the truck's engine, and the yard went still except for flies and a thin, breathy sound rising from the limestone ring in the dirt. Men leaned over the mouth of the old hand-dug well. "Buddy, can you hear me?" a deputy called. The answer came up faint, high, hitching cries that carried up the shaft like steam. Someone said he heard "Mama." Someone else swore it was only sobbing. It was late summer, 1949, North Texas. The sun hit the caliche like a hammer. The rancher's wife stood with her hands to her mouth, and the neighbors pressed through the gate with towels and rope. Her son had been chasing a stray pup. One blink, and the child was gone. The wooden cover over the well had rotted and folded in. The men peered down and saw only darkness and a hint of moisture on the stone. A carbide lamp on a rope swung and sparked, and the crying rose again, thin as thread. A teenager volunteered to go. They wrapped the rope around his chest, and he slid until the shaft pinched tight. He exhaled to squeeze, scraped ribs, and coughed in dust. "Pull," he choked. They hauled him back red-faced. "It narrows to nothing." A fire truck rolled in, siren off. The captain measured the opening and called for a tripod and block. Floodlights turned the well mouth into a spotlighted circle. A city worker brought a pump and hose to feed air. A neighbor lowered a jar of milk tied with twine. The jar clinked on stone. The crying swelled and went thin again, riding the gusts. The captain lowered a microphone on a wire linked to a field phone. Static hissed, then the sound they knew, not words, just a small body's panic torn into noise. The mother flinched like struck. At full dark, an oilfield man named Ellis arrived with a rig hoist and a spool of steel cable. "We run tools in holes all day," he said, half joking, and slipped the cable down with a messenger weight. 90 feet, then the weight trembled on metal. "Pocket," he said, "maybe a washout." The crying came again, 2 short bursts and a long, thin wail that bent every head. The captain weighed options. A parallel shaft would take days and risk collapse. Ellis suggested a slim rescuer who could worm past the pinch. "Absolutely not," the captain said. Someone remembered an old fenceman who'd crawled culverts for the WPA. They sent a car. He arrived chewing coffee beans, tied a bowline around his chest, and buckled on narrow lanterns at wrist and boot. They eased him down. He exhaled through the waist, shoulders scraping. At 40 feet, cold air. At 55, dust rattled, pebbles pattered. He wormed a little more and set his boot light on stone. "Cavity," he said. "Can't see in yet." They fed rope. He pressed cheek to the wall and inched until bone met rock with a dull knock. Another inch. "I'm through," he gasped. "Hold me." Silence, except the generator's idle. His voice came level with effort. "No boy here?" The words hung like a dropped wrench. "Say again?" the captain asked. "No child," the man said. "Empty pocket. The sound's wind. It runs through a crack in the mouth of this cavity like a whistle. Gusts push air down the shaft. The echo rides back up and turns into crying." No one moved. The mother gripped the rim, knuckles white. "But he was here," she said, voice breaking. "He was just here." They hauled the rescuer back through the waist and set him on planks. He held up a mud-dark bundle worked loose from the shelf of rock. Splinters, nail heads, a tangle of burlap. "What's left of your cover," he said. "And mice." It fell in, made the crash. The deputy took off his hat, spoke to the mother quietly. The captain called down the shaft one more time in case some miracle answered. Only wind came back. At first light, they widened the search. They started at the well and moved outward in a spiral, eyes on the ground, calling the boy's name in low voices so the wind wouldn't throw their words back. They checked sheds, the pump house, the cedar post pile, the windmill tank, the wash. A set of small tracks led toward the pasture, sneaker tread stamped deeper where he'd slid. The prints vanished in buffalo grass and reappeared on cracked silt near a shallow draw, then quit at the fence. A ranch hand whistled, and the stray pup limped out from under a rain barrel, burrs packed in its paws. A telephone company driver stopped by the gate mid-morning. He'd seen a little boy at dusk the night before, standing on the shoulder up by the highway spur, waving both arms, a dog nearby. He'd figured a parent was close and drove on. He told it now with his eyes on his boots. The deputy took him out to the spot. In the grass at the base of a billboard that read, "We're listening," switched to dial, he bagged 2 candy wrappers. A woman later said she'd seen a tan sedan on the shoulder with its trunk open. She hadn't seen a child. She was late to start supper and kept driving. By noon, the well was a hole again. The crowd thinned. Reporters wrote the plain facts. A missing boy, a rescue that found only wind, a community still searching. The rancher's wife sat at the kitchen table, staring past a water glass she hadn't touched. A neighbor came in with a covered plate and set it down. Outside, the crew folded the tripod and stowed it without looking back into the shaft. Ellis coiled his cable and said nothing. That evening, state troopers set sawhorses at the crossroads and logged every plate. Church ladies came with ham sandwiches and coffee in paper cups. Nobody finished a whole one. The school superintendent opened the gym for volunteers to sleep, though few lay down. Through the second night, men walked the bar ditches shoulder to shoulder, lamps clipped to their caps, calling between fence posts as if passing a message hand to hand. A pilot in a crop duster flew grid lines at first light and saw only pastures laid out like corduroy and one coyote loping west. The deputy called neighboring counties, and they sent men without being asked. The search stretched into days. Men dragged the stock pond with a grappling hook and prayed not to snag on overalls. They checked the abandoned line shack up by the section line. A cousin followed the fence on horseback for miles. The deputy canvassed drivers, wrote times, sketched distances. The cries from the well lived on in whispers after the generator was gone. Some said the crying proved the boy had been down there and somehow climbed out. Some said wind could mimic anything you loved if it meant turning you blind. The fire captain kept a single-page memo from a county over, wind in a dry shaft, making piano wire noises that bent into weeping when they bounced off narrow stone. He filed it under the clipping about this search and closed the box. When the first cold front pushed south and the pastures turned the color of cardboard, a mail carrier saw a blue strap tangled in barbed wire near the highway spur. The brass buckle was scratched. The strap had weathered, but not much. No body followed. The deputy carried it to the ranch. The mother held the strap like a limb and pressed it to her chest. He was wearing blue, she had said that night. She said nothing now. They filled the well before winter. Gravel and quicklime, rebar, a round of concrete leveled with a trowel. The rancher stood with his hands in his pockets while the disc cured. The yard took back its quiet. When north wind pressed through the cottonwoods after dark, you could still hear it move like breath, but it had no voice anymore. It was only wind doing what wind does. The trucks came and went. Somewhere, the truth stayed as small and unreachable as that side pocket in the earth, close enough to hear, too narrow to touch. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.